Hey, this is Dan from MusicXplorer. Today we are talking to singer-songwriter Glen Burtnik. Glen is a New Jersey musician whose career started in Beatlemania with Marshall Crenshaw. Glen has released several solo albums and has been a part of the band Styx at 2 different times with 2 different roles. He is co-author of the Patti Smythe and Don Henley hit, Sometimes Love Just Ain't Enough. His current band, the Weeklings, released their latest album, 3, earlier this year.
So Glen, how you doing today?
Doing great.
The Beatles are in your life, I have to say.
I got very emotional about music before I could even speak, so I'm told. So music had a real hold on me emotionally, but it was after the Beatles played Ed Sullivan that the hysteria of the Beatles really got me. And I started studying drums right away. And my mom, started paying for drum lessons. And so I thought I was going to be a drummer. And I was for a little while. It's a fabulous foundation for musicians, for songwriters. We didn't really have instruments in my house from my parents. My older brother, Brian, started to bring instruments around. And so I started, messing around with the guitar. And eventually my dad bought me my own guitar. And I strung it correctly. I held it left-handed, but I strung it the correct way, which is the way Paul McCartney and Jimi Hendrix played. So in the very beginning, I was capable of playing both left-handed strung guitars and right-handed guitars strung left-handed. It's confusing. But anyway, I stayed with that. And I play upside down and backwards. There are lefties that believe that the best way to play is holding it right-handed because your left hand, your stronger hand, your more agile hand, deals with the fretboard. And if you're a flat picker, if you're basically just going changa, changa, changa with your right hand, well, that's your weaker hand. And it's less agile to just hold a pick and strum.
Your breakthrough was through Beatlemania?
I was in other bands and I played a lot of bar bands and I was in a show band that traveled. A friend of mine turned me on to, there was an ad in the Village Voice looking for Beatle lookalikes and sound-alikes. So I called the number and I auditioned and I got the job, and it helped that I was left-handed. I was shipped out to the West Coast to play with Marshall Crenshaw. Marshall was my John, and I was his Paul. I've often said I didn't go to college. I went to Beatlemania.
Yeah, right.
Because that was about really trying to nail, that was the first tribute kind of thing that I was aware of. And it was really about trying to nail the material as close to the records as possible. So that was a good training ground for my ear and for my vocal abilities.
So you replaced Mitch, right? Mitch Weissman.
I didn't replace him. What happened was there was a show in New York, there was a show in Chicago, and there's a show in Los Angeles. Each show had 2 casts. So there was Mitch, which we called it Bunk 1, and then there was Bunk 2. So there were 2 casts per the New York show. And there were 2 casts for the Chicago show, and there were 2 casts for the Los Angeles show. So 2, 4, 6 casts going at the same time at the peak of the show Beatlemania. So Mitch was still working when I was in Bunk 2.
You've been in various Beatle tribute projects throughout your career, and some with Bob Berger.
Bob and I ended up putting this band together. Bob Berger and I put the Weeklings together, which it just started as a hobby, like let's play some Beatles songs together. It evolved into a original act. When it was the 45th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper, I put a big act together and we performed at theaters. A year later, it was the 45th anniversary of the White Album. Once again, I needed a choir. I needed an orchestra. I filled up the stage with as many as 25 people. But then when it was the 50th anniversary of the first 2 Beatle albums, those 2 albums really don't have a lot of instrumentation. It's almost always 4 instruments. I put in place my friends, Bob Berger, John Murjavi, and Dave Anthony at the time was the drummer, and that is what became the Weeklings. Lennon and McCartney in particular gave away a number of songs. They were writing and writing and writing, and so they would contribute some of their songs to other artists that the Beatles would not record themselves. They never got around to recording themselves. So we started looking into that material. We said, this is cool, we're a Beatle band, let's record Beatles songs that the Beatles didn't record. Nevertheless, it's their music. I had a dream. I always wanted to record at Abbey Road Studios in Studio 2, where the Beatles recorded lion's share of their music. So we got that together. We flew to London and we recorded, in addition to recording some of our own songs,
Right.
we recorded 4 Lennon-McCartney songs that had never been cut by the Beatles.
So what's next for the Weeklings after we get out of this pandemic?
We've been recording some isolation tracks, at home. It's worked out pretty well. Bob and I are writing, and we're working on stuff. We'll probably put out another album. Right now, there's a John Lennon compilation album, or covers, commemorating his 80th birthday. We contributed 2 songs, 2 tracks. The album is filled with recordings by acts on Gem Records doing John Lennon songs, and we did the opening track, which is The Word. We did our own arrangement of The Word, and the closing track, which is our rearrangement of a very rare Lennon song called What's the New Mary Jane.